Sorry about getting cut off in the last video. I still don't have my timing down very well. As what I was saying is the Census Bureau does surveys of household wealth, household income, education levels, all kinds of demographic information between the 10-year census. And the multi-stage sampling they use for that is absolutely insane. It has so many parts, I don't know how they keep track. Anyway, so if you notice, we haven't said anything yet about how big our sample size should be. We'll talk about how we figure out what our sample size should be when we get to chapter 9. For right now, the only important things to know about sample size are that how big the sample size is depends on the level of confidence the researchers want and the amount of time and money they are willing to spend. So generally, the more time and the more money you're willing to spend, the more accurate your results will be. So let's look at some examples and see if we can figure out what type of sampling method they used for each of them. In the first one, it says a farmer divides his orchard into 50 subsections, randomly selects 4, and samples all of the trees within those 4 subsections to approximate his orchard yield. So for this one, we're dividing it into groups, randomly selecting 4 and sampling every, because it says all, within those 4 subsections. That makes it a cluster sample. So let's scroll back up and let me point out something here. Stratified, well, maybe scroll back down here. Here's some space we can write in. So as soon as the population gets divided into groups, we're looking at either a cluster or a stratified. Now, how do we tell the difference? So here's the difference. Cluster is all individuals from some groups, and stratified is some individuals from all groups. And that's just one of those things you're going to have to memorize. All right, so back to our examples. So number 1 is definitely cluster because we did all trees from some sections. So the trees are the individuals here. Okay, a radio station asks its listeners to call in their opinion regarding the use of U.S. forces in peacekeeping missions. So as soon as you see someone asking users to respond or listeners to call in, you should automatically think convenience sample, and furthermore, in this case, voluntary response, because you have to volunteer to respond by calling the station. Okay. So to determine his DSL internet connection speed, Sean divides the day into 4 parts: morning, midday, evening, and late night. Then he measures his connection speed at 5 randomly selected times during each part of the day. So we divided something up, so you should immediately think, okay, this one's either cluster or stratified. How do we decide which? Well, he didn't measure his internet connection speed at every time during 1 or 2 parts of the day. He picked 5 randomly selected times during each part of the day. So this is a sum individuals being times from all being the different parts of the day groups. So this one is stratified. And the last one says, to estimate the percentage of defects in a recent manufacturing batch, a quality control manager at Intel selects every 8th chip that comes off the assembly line, starting with the 3rd, until she obtains a sample of 140 chips. So anytime you see that they're selecting every whatever, kth number, then you should think systematic, because I have a system for how I'm getting the next individual in my sample, and that is by counting so many down the line and grabbing the next person. So that's it for the different types of sampling we're going to talk about in this course. In the next section, we'll talk about bias in sampling.